There's a version of me that only exists when I'm here. Not a better version, not a worse one, just different. And every time I come back to the Philippines, it takes about 48 hours before I start to feel him showing up again. And that version of me doesn't check the clock as much. I eat a little bit slower. I notice things. And when I notice that shift happening, I kind of always ask myself the same questions. Which version of me actually is closer to or who I want to be? There's a pattern that I started noticing doing multiple trips going back and forth. And I wasn't sure at first what it really was. I thought it was, it's a brand new, experience, all this kind of stuff. And I actually thought it was a bit of more like, okay, this is a holiday version. This is why I'm feeling better. Not necessarily the weather or the foods or the culture. It's just basically I'm taking time off. But I noticed something much deeper after a while, after doing this for many times and staying longer. There's a comparison that most people just can't really make doing it when you're doing it 6 months and 6 months. Because you live in one environment, and just that assumption alone is what makes your basis of your whole surroundings. And as I said earlier, I've been doing this now. Well, I've been actually doing this now about 8 years, going back and forth, literally spending 6 months there and 6 months back in Canada. And I really started to realize something that took me a long time to see. The environment you're in isn't just a backdrop to your life. It's actively shaping the person you are inside. And most of us never get a chance to notice because we never leave long enough to compare. So for example, what does Canada, what does it do to me? It's definitely the underlying pace, the pressure. And I got to be careful when I say how the pressure is because we are in charge of that to some degree. But it's a subtle background pressure, just the driving, the knowing what you got to do, the energy, the vibes. So even if things are going smoothly, okay, there is an energy level here that we're always running out of time. A really good example would be even like when I mentioned driving, if you don't hit that gas the second the light turns green, people behind you are honking. Somehow, even when you're kind of feeling relaxed, theoretically, there's always a background noise. You've got to do this. You've got to pick up this. You've got to make sure this is done on time. And you tell yourself it's kind of normal. And you accept it as being normal, and just deal with it. And actually, what I started noticing is you stop noticing because the stress becomes your baseline, your underlying baseline. It's just a normal part of life. There's that. Again, I call it kind of an energy, a vibe. Not necessarily that you're unhappy, but you're kind of always slightly braced for something. I guess in one way of saying it, you're kind of on edge. You're prepared. You've got your guard up. Now, I'm not saying Canada or North America is a bad thing. I built my life here, raised a family. It gave me a lot. But I also spent decades running at a pace I never consciously chose. And actually, honestly, never really questioned. You kind of, the mind adapts. You think the tension you carry, you have, is just part of being an adult. And I guess to some degree it is. You think the constant mental chatter is just how life is or how it's supposed to be, and actually in a lot of essence, you don't even want to stand out and complain about it because you think you're going to be put on the spot or that's not, it's just not how it is. This is all normal part of life, like grow up and deal with it kind of thing. It's hard to pinpoint it, that pressure, when you are facing it constantly, and it's in a way a nagging one in the background. So you do adapt, your mind adapts, and you learn it's just, again, part of your system. And you actually really don't realize how much weight you're carrying until you put it down. This is something you get caught in that loop. And I think for a lot of people, when you never get that chance to put your weight down, you really don't know that it even exists. Now, what happens in the first 48 hours when I'm in the Philippines? I notice as soon as I step off the airplane, first of all, you get hit with that beautiful warm weather. And in many ways, it's even though it's noisier, it somehow feels much less aggressive. Even as I'm stepping out of the airport, it's busy, it's crazy, but it feels somehow more relaxing. It's hard to explain. It's almost like my mind is starting to click back and, oh, right, this is where I can let go. This is where I can start to relax. That I pretty much get like a physical sensation of, okay, I can slow down. I'm allowed to slow down here. It's almost like I have permission to slow down, if that makes any sense. Not like, the problems ever disappear. And I'm never recommending run away from your problems. That's totally not the point I'm making here. And it's not that life becomes perfect. It's that abundant pressure that you've kind of left behind and you feel it releasing here. Kind of like that low-level hum of modern life, just goes a little bit more quiet. And, the very first time I stepped off the airport, it was, first of all, overwhelming. It was, where do I go? What do I do? Etc. So I was filled with adrenaline. But as I'm doing this more and more often now, almost wish I could go back with no memory and do that experience again. But it feels much more like coming home now. And then slowly I start shifting into that mindset, I'm just here, not planning the next thing, not processing the last thing, actually present in the moment, and the moment I'm in. I feel it's a lot less demanding. And this is what's really important, when you can get to that phase where there's that hidden underlying letting go of that demanding feeling, things that, that just aren't important. And I kind of forgot what that felt like until I come back. And even though I'm going halfway around the world just to remember it, I think it's a value. And I'm not saying that I have to come here. Here's what I think is actually going on and why I think it matters more than just people who travel. Environment is not neutral. The point we talk a lot about is mindset, habits, discipline. But we actually never really talk about the environment. Those things are the things that we actually survive in. Like a fish doesn't choose to behave like a fish. It behaves like a fish because it's in the water. When you change the water, the peace, the pressure, the visual, the noise, the social expectations, you change your behavior almost automatically without willpower, without effort. And I think environment plays a significant role in your behavior and then ultimately your mindset. You're given a different perspective, a different view, basically giving yourself permission to look at everything differently. And this is some of the most important stuff I've been discovering, and allowing myself the opportunity to explore that by going and being involved in it for a significant amount of time and then back and forth. I'm really able to get in depth of that. Like I would say, most of what we call who we are actually is just a response to where we are. And that can be extremely humbling if you allow it to be. You could go on and say, like, for years you're thinking you're stressed, maybe your short temper, your constant distraction was like a character flaw. And maybe you didn't realize as much as the environment can bring out who we are, or more importantly, what we think we should be. Now, not necessarily all of it, but more than I was ever willing to admit. And our system is built very strangely. When you're in your environment and dealing with it, you so automatically put everything on a normal path. You think, okay, this is just how it is. This is what I have to do. And your body tries to adapt to that without ever knowing the difference. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that everybody needs to just move to the Philippines and then you're going to find that magic bullet. That's not really the point. The real point is, I've removed myself from the normal environment that I was used to long enough to actually notice the contrast. And you don't actually know how much of your daily experience is chosen versus inherited. And what I actually started to notice, even the simple things, the way I eat, I'm able to enjoy it. I think it also goes by where I'm choosing to eat. In other words, my view, my surroundings, it allows me to absorb the moment much better, the flavors. I eat slower. That's just that. And that's a huge part. Being able to experience it as a food, not a necessity, not a fuel, not like a mandatory thing. I'm actually get to experience it really, the flavors. And this might sound silly, but that's what I've noticed. And even a simple thing as a walk. Not necessarily somewhere I got to urgently go, and now this doesn't happen right away. This is why I'm starting to notice it. Because when I first get there, especially the first few times, I was still in that mindset. Okay, I'm going here, got to go here, get this off my checklist. I'm walking with a faster pace. I'm not noticing anything around me besides that people are my way, and that changes. That urgency, that hidden pressure of urgency melts away like ice on a sunny day. And when I'm talking with people, it seems less, well, for lack of better words, transactional, more human. It's more in depth, understanding somebody else's point of view a lot more, because I'm not on that stuck mindset. Okay, I got to get this done. I got to go here. Got to do this. It's a lot more personal. And you learn a lot more when this happens. You really learn a lot about yourself. You learn about other things at the same time. Your sleep pattern changes. Now that's obviously the time change and everything. There's some negatives to that. But the positive part is you start, like you go to sleep basically not bracing for tomorrow. You go to sleep much more relaxed. You have a much more, you feel lighter. Now this can have a lot to do with the weather as well, the sleeping, okay? In comparison to, especially if it's, if you're from a cold country or whatever, because it is a lot warmer. So, and some people might need the air conditioner, so on and so forth. That's not saying it's going to be completely perfect. I'm talking about the mindset of actually when you feel like you're going to sleep. And then your overall mood, there is a lightness that just kind of shows up without trying to manufacture it. There's an automatic relief. There's an automatic, you feel lighter. I don't know how else to explain it. I will say, like, many times when I come back, people kind of ask me, well, what did you do? Where did you go? How, what did you all see? And I do very little in comparison for how long I'm there. And because I enjoy it. I look at it like I don't make plans. I wake up in that morning, I look outside, I see what the weather is like. Do I want to go for a drive today? Do I want to go to the hot springs? Do I want to go to the restaurant? I look at it like there is no pressure. I do what my mood tells me, and I can't plan tomorrow for that. I don't know how I'm going to wake up. I don't know how my sleep's going to be, what my energy level is going to be, and there's no need to even worry about it. I don't think about it. I don't have to think about it. I wake up, I see what the clouds are telling me. I see what the sun's telling me. I see how early I'm actually up and wide awake. Do I feel like having a breakfast? What do I want to do? Well, it's early enough. Maybe today I'm going to go for the long bike ride. I'm really into that. I'm going to do that today. That's also my mindset, that particular moment. And I go. Now, I will say there's an advantage because it's also cost effective, but being there. But that mood that allows you to have that pace, that is worth gold. And these are very subtle things that slowly you start to notice. And I really notice it when I come back and I'm explaining to other people, like, okay, what did you do? They're thinking, well, I'm there for 6 months. Man, I must have just explored every island, every beach, every restaurant, every hotel, every mall, and I say, I went to 3 or 4 spots in the whole time kind of thing, but I do it very slowly and I enjoy it. I enjoy the present moment. These aren't big dramatic revolutions. They're small things, but they really add up. The small things are where the quality of life actually lives. And that's sort of the real question. I mean, this is about life, your life, the meaning of your happiness. Now, I've been moving between 2 countries, having that kind of contrast, being able to do the comparison on the stress level, the mood, the expenses, how much easier it is to retire somewhere. You're doing all your life for savings. How much do you need in one country versus another one? What does this allow me? What's worth the sacrifices so I can have a better life? Not saying this is, for everybody, but I'm able to share this contrast that isn't really available to everybody. And this is what I really want to get out there. So I guess a much better way to explain this, how much of your daily basis is actually you and how much of this is just the water you're swimming in. Because if most of it is the environment, and I think a lot of it really truly is, then the real question isn't how do I become a different person? It's what kind of environment am I willing to build around myself? The question changed a lot for me. Still working through what it actually really means, but I really think it's worth sitting with and really taking a deep dive, because at the end of the day, none of us are getting any younger. And I really struggle with how much savings does a person need? How can you simplify your life but actually feel like you have a lot more of life? And I'm saying there is definitely a way with that. There is 100%. This is what I've been finding. This is what the contrast has allowed me to explore and get deeper into. Real important thing I'll say, I don't think ever human nature feels like you have enough. So depend almost at what job level you're at or whatever your income level is. There's always, and in some ways, the more you have, the more you need, because now you've got to devise systems for protecting what you already have. And we do get caught up in that loop. Now, if this resonates with you a little bit, it's not really a complete travel channel guide in that essence. It's not necessarily a retirement guide, but it definitely is an honest reflection on what happens when you start questioning the peace you've been living at. And I would say what you're really desiring looking at. And also kind of putting at ease some of the fears, okay? Because coming from a very good, decent job and actually leaving a lot of, and leaving a lot behind to make these transitions, you know, it's scary as heck. And I'm able to share this information and share my experiences. And they're not all positive. I've made many mistakes, you know, and if you're somewhere in that middle of that questioning right now, you're in the right place at this particular channel, because this is what I'm going to be exploring. This is what I'm sharing. Because at the end of the day, I actually feel if I could wrap this all up in a positive mindset, is it's a lot easier than most people think. And I can truly say, if I would have heard that sentence several years back, I would have just go, he doesn't know what he's talking about. And because you think they don't know me, they don't understand my situation, they don't understand what's going on here. You know, everybody assumes that the other person doesn't assume the real issue. And I'm guilty of that, and I'm still learning. But this is what I'm getting at. This is what I've gone through and experienced, and it is actually far easier than you can imagine. So again, if this kind of information resonates with you, if you've got questions, leave them in the comments. If this is the type of stuff you want to learn more about, stick with me. Watch for the next videos coming along, and I appreciate all the guys' support and comments and likes and subscribes. This is fantastic, and we'll see you on the next one.